It's part of the talent.
But you still end up with is the speed of play and the precision and everything else. And how on earth, as a national team, if the ultimate goal, which it has to be, is to win the World Cup, then you have to put a team out there that has a chance. And I just don't think ignoring, which whether he does it or not, he can't ignore Pulisic because he's clearly the American best player. He's playing on an elite team, whether he comes in as a sub or not. He plays enough when he's not injured that he clearly fits in on one of these best teams in the world. He can't ignore him. The fans know he's out there. Weston McKennie, and there's a few others that he just
but he plays on time to time.
But the other roster spots, do you want a center back or center back pairing that plays in MLS and is used to a significantly slower pace of play going against attackers that are used to playing faster?
Your Neymars, your Messis, your Ronaldos, your Mbappe's, your Benzema's. You do not want them to play against that.
They're not used to it. I mean, the attackers in MLS are nowhere near that level. They're just not.
I rather have Brooks out there personally.
Yeah. And Brooks is this, he's been cast aside, and I don't understand it. I mean, I guess he's older in the grand scheme of things as a center back, and he's slower, but.
You also could say the same thing about Fernandinho. He was there when City needed him the most.
Yeah. And what you can't get out of it is the soccer IQ, which you were alluding to earlier, is most of the players that are able to play in Europe.
You're going to have to take some veterans on that team. Brooks should be a veteran on that team. Because Pulisic, at the end of the day, is going to be a leader on that team, but he's also not going to know exactly what to do with the World Cup. And most of the team, I understand most of the teams are not going to know what to do with the World Cup. Just in the fact we haven't went to the World Cup in 4 years.
Yeah.
So most of the teams have been flushed out already. But there's also some survivors that are in there.
Well, there's another a thought process among some of the men's national team fans is when we comes to the World Cups, he is going to switch more to a European players. But what's the point of 2+ years of qualifying and the chance to play together and everything else?
There's no point. There's never going to be team chemistry, team camaraderie going on, and you do not want to find that out as you're going to the World Cup or as you're at the World Cup. I understand there's going to be training sessions at the World Cup and team bonding and crap, but there's no point of building it up and just disbanding it right away.
Well, and that's the thing is it's one thing. Okay, you're going to have some transition to players that maybe come out of nowhere that we don't even. And again, it's not that far away. We should be playing the World Cup. That's a whole separate issue right now. But we're 6 months away. I guess it's 5 months. 5 months away from the World Cup starting. There's going to be players that might pop up and they get hot wherever they're playing.
Hey, I'll be there.
And that's going to change some of the thought process.
For Canada, though.
But you can't change the whole team. They've been qualifying for 2 years. You've had this chance for them to learn how to play together and everything else. And again, it's hard enough when you're playing for a coach like Pulisic in Chelsea, and that coach wants to play a certain way, and then he comes to Burkhalter and he wants him to play a certain way, and you've got to transition and learn how to do that transition. But to not have had time to play with your teammates and get an idea of, are you going to be playing better with the center back you've played for 2 years, or better with someone that you played, like this past weekend? You hadn't met these players before the day before, and most of them you didn't get to play in the tryout Saturday. You played, so you're meeting to some degree some of them on Sunday for the first time. You don't necessarily know where's my left back going to be when I go to make this pass, or where's the center back going to be, or is he going to take out that player when he needs to, type of thing. And so it's going to be hard to do that.
The consistency of the balance.
I understand the thought process, but I just don't think that's what he's doing. I don't think he's gone through 2 years with the idea he's going to switch out his whole team, or a majority of the team that aren't European to European players, and I just don't think it makes sense. I mean, he's been successful, but Klinsmann was successful in most ways. I think Klinsmann got us on.
Klinsmann got out of the group to death, and people don't really respect that much. The group was Ghana, which was a team we always played, basically at World Cups or friendlies that we basically always struggled against. Germany, which went on to win the World Cup, and Portugal. People do not respect that enough. That we got out of that group. I know then we lost to Belgium barely.
Yeah.
We barely lost to Belgium in the next round. We had to go to overtime to lose against them.
Yeah. And that's
I know they got knocked out by Argentina next round, but Argentina did go all the way to the finals as well, and they got knocked out in overtime in the very last minute, basically, of that as well. So,
yeah. So we played against a team that won the World Cup, and you know
the team that knocked us out got beat by one of the best teams in the world,
right.
and the GOAT.
So, and whether they, there was rumors, I guess, that the players didn't like Klinsmann. I don't think he didn't strike me as a very political person. I think that sometimes you've got to know how to play the game. But I think we need to stop with that. If the coach is accomplishing what he needs to accomplish,
all the
it
players
doesn't
don't
matter.
The thing is, all the players don't have to like the coach, and I feel like people forget that as well. If he's getting the results down at the time, all the players don't have to like the coach, just on the fact that if you're getting the results, you're not going to be booed from the spot. Also, with the U.S., I feel like it's more about politics than actually just playing and to make everyone happy. That's why I do think the coach now for the U.S. is also that way, as I was describing, where he's just letting players from the MLS flow through the system instead of European players that are going out there and showing them stuff on the world stage instead of American stuff.
Well, and I don't. When you look at friendlies, because these games that they've played this month are meaningless in the grand scheme of
People call it
things.
Nations League. People don't give a crap.
It doesn't mean anything. It's too far away from the World Cup to me. But it was an opportunity to bring in players like Josh Sargent, who's played in the Premier League and was playing fairly well and scoring some goals. And again, on a team that, frankly, it's hard to score goals with. His team is at a disadvantage. So why not bring him in and put him in a few of these games that don't mean a whole lot and see what he can do? We're playing Granada. I mean, I don't know how many people live on the island of Granada, but it's not a lot. And if we don't win 4-0, then it's not successful. And then you got people say, well, no, that's ridiculous. It's like, we better win 4-0 or more. But imagine how we would do if we actually put a decent team. I mean, they really, Pulisic wasn't even, if he was in the stadium, he wasn't playing because somebody else was wearing his uniform. But bring in these players, how do they interact with the other players? Does Sargent, interact well with the others? Can he interact? Can he play with the midfielders?
I feel like it's more important for players to be better together than coaches and players. I do feel like that's also a point because it's more important for me how I am with the coaches than it is the players. But at the pro scene, for the national team, it's different from the European team because you could be worse. You could hate the best player on your team. You could be the two best players, but you guys could be very well player play in the game together. Which is because I feel like there's a difference because I understand you're going to spend more time with your European team, but also at the fact that is you don't have to be with that player there on a very consistent basis. With the national team, you're going to be that player on a consistent basis.
Well, and that's the thing.
Because it's going to be a smaller quarter, smaller in density. And there's not going to be the training wise. It's going to be bang bang bang. You're more spread out.
Well, it comes back to twofold exactly. Is the interaction with, say, Pep and Ederson from Manchester City. That's Pep Guardiola, the Manchester City coach, and Ederson, their goalie, isn't more important. They're interacting with each other 10 months out of the year. They need to get along. Pep needs to trust him to run, and he does. He takes chances that we sit here and go, "What are you doing, Ederson?" But most of the time he gets away with it. That's more important because you're interacting with each other. When Ederson goes to Brazil and plays, now again he's competing against Alisson for one of the best teams in the world. But whether Alisson and Ederson get along, or either of them get along with the coach for Brazil, probably matters to some degree if they get to play. But if they're, do they have to like it? Is it that important that they like their teammates? Not really. As long as they can play together on the field, it doesn't matter because it's such a smaller amount of time. And if you as a player just can't deal with that, it is what it is. As I said, if the U.S. players didn't like Klinsmann, so what company? So what? Deal with it. If you want to play for the U.S. national team, now again, there's recruiting. There's always those dual citizen players or tri-citizen players that there's multiple teams. But it seems right now we're losing the Mexico-U.S. ones. Where a lot of times we were getting those U.S. the ones that could go play for Mexico or U.S. We were getting them. Right now it seems like they're all going to play for Mexico.
I do think that's with the coach and anything, because we have Berghalter.
Well, exactly. It's like
Berghalter's not been the guy personally, but
he doesn't. He doesn't.
He doesn't strike me as like. I don't know his ins and outs. I don't know his tactics fully because I'm not analyzing him per se. But I do feel like he's not as in tune as other coaches have coached the U.S. or even coached Mexico, all with their players and with the country, and show you what players need. Because Klinsmann was in the system. He was trying to build up the U.S. He was trying to rebuild how it was focused and how the players were brought up, how the youth system, all of that. The U.S. board shut him down. They didn't want any of that. And then for Gertler, I just don't feel like he's involved. I feel like he's there with the club.
Well, Klinsmann and it was clearly, and we talked about this in the first episode. Klinsmann came over from Germany, where the German team that won the World Cup, most of those players came through a system that Klinsmann overhauled. He went through and just said, "This system's not working. We need to fix it." Again, we talked about this in the first episode too. When you do that in a European country and the national team coach speaks, that just happens. The clubs get in line because every club wants to have a kid on their national team because they can then promote it to against when they're recruiting to get youth in. So they're going to do what the national team coaches, which is not what happens here. And I think that was Klinsmann's a little bit of his struggle. But he was trying to overhaul the system. He was trying to say, what we're doing isn't working. We need to modify what we're doing into something. I haven't seen any signs or heard of any signs that Berghalter's shown any interest in the youth system in the U.S. Maybe he is behind the scenes, maybe he is, and I haven't heard of it, but I haven't heard anything in that regard. And you got to look at it, okay, that's where it's, the U.S. does have a young team, so you hope that we're not, most likely not winning the World Cup this year, but hopefully in 2026 when it's in the U.S. and
Canada. I don't feel like we'll win that World Cup. I do feel like we'll have a good shot at it at the time. Because I do feel like we'll have enough time for those players to develop and the people my age and just get through a system, get at a club, and get all sorted out then. But I feel like the main problem I have with the U.S. right now, do you feel like there's a style of play? I don't feel like there's a style of play trying to be active in that team. Like they play out of the back. It's very basic playing out of the back. It's not like, I understand we're not going to see Man City, Liverpool, or Bayern Munich playing out of the back. I understand that. I don't need to hear it. I understand that. It's just at the problem. It's not even like playing out of the back. It's like when we go forward, there's attack. It's not like going out wide, switching the field, trying to draw out defenders. I understand with our nation, you're only going to play probably two teams, Mexico and Canada, that are going to put up a good fight. And the only problem is when we go away. I understand we're going to be playing really crappy stadiums when we leave the U.S., Mexico, or Canada area. Yeah. I understand that, but it's also the fact that we have to be able to play that.
Well, and part of that, like CONCACAF has to come up with like I forget who the team we picked in our last friendly after they played it in Austin.
It's a horrible stadium.
The stadium was horrible. The field was terrible.
But also,
people are going to get hurt.
Yeah, but I understand that. But also, the U.S. always put it in a cold stadium when they play.
Yeah. Oh no, I mean we take advantage of it too.
If they do that, U.S. has to also be restricted in that area.
No,
because basically every spot but Canada is going to be playing in a hotter condition than most of the U.S. is.
Yeah, and I understand playing in a colder climate, trying to get it to some degree, but we've taken it to a level that's not necessary. I mean, there's rumors that Turner, played goalie and one of the he had frostbite. The goalie for I can't remember which team we were playing had to come off at halftime because he had issues with the cold, and it was bitterly cold.
Because you're not moving. As the goalie, you're not moving in that scenario, so you can't get warm out.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot the goalie can do to get themselves warmer. But you look at the stadium that, again, the US played in recently, and it's an embarrassment. And CONCACAF has to step in and say, again, and US has to step up in that regard too, of this is you gotta find a stadium that no one's gonna get hurt.
They don't care about player safety in this regard. They don't
Right.
really care.
No, and I mean, we'll get into that, kind of get into that briefly with, FIFA. When you look at what they're doing with the World Cup and expanding it, and then Champions League's expanding, I'm not sure I think it's this year where they're expanding and adding additional games, and even Kevin De Bruyne,
Champions League is just
one of the best midfielders in the world, plays for Manchester City, which is my team, and
the
again,
best midfielder.
Belgium has qualified for the World Cup. These Nation League games mean nothing. And he actually came out and said, he's like, this is ridiculous, I need to rest. And he's right. At this point,
These players should be on summer break, especially with the year they have, the season they have coming up.
Yeah.
They need a longer break than usual.
Yeah.
They're going straight because they should be. I understand they're not. They only have one break a year technically,
Yeah.
or one break a season, but they do have like little periods off or like weeks off where they don't go visit their families basically.
Yeah.
I understand that, but it's also they do need rest in those times because like I said, they're practicing twice a day for their club. They might have one day off a week and they're playing a game a week or two.
And it's become, again, the Qatar World Cup, we can have a whole session on that. I could probably bring in 5 people to have a discussion on why we're playing
Probably have a
the
video
World
on that
Cup
as
in
well.
Qatar. But it completely corrupt. We know that they bribe their way into it.
When you do the change the season it's in, you know that there's something wrong.
Well, they literally.
It's going to be hot as it is now, which is in about hundreds every single day here.
Yeah.
Here, it's going to be that hot in the winter time,
Right.
or hotter.
Yeah, and but the problem comes, they bid on the World Cup with, we can hold this in the summer when it's always
When
held.
people were dying
it's
putting up the stadiums just on heat exhaustion alone,
It's 130 degrees. Everybody knew that we were going to end up having to do what we did and move it to the winter where it's at least people aren't going to die on the field, hopefully. But we know it's corrupt, and we as the fans or we as players, that you got to stand up at some point. These players need to take it off. Their season coming up, when you look at it, unlike MLS, which will be ending the season a little early, so that the American players that go in and the Canadian players that are in the MLS, etc.
any players that are coming
coming out of MLS, when they're done with the World Cup, they're going to get a break, and not a long one, but they'll get a break. The Manchester City and Liverpool and Bayern Munich players and Real Madrid, as soon as they finish the World Cup,
they're going to go back to
they're going to go right back into the league play. And again, I'm sure there'll be a small break, but it's these. Your body can only take so much. It needs a break. It needs a time to
The problem I
heal.
have with the World Cup as well is I don't understand how they're going to be able to play more matches. Is on the fact they're going to have to take cooling and water breaks during those games,
Yeah.
and so that's at least 4 minutes. At least 4 minutes that they're going to have to be of each half.
Yeah.
So the stoppage time? So they're going to be playing over 90 minutes, basically every single game.
Yeah, probably closer to 100 minutes.
So I don't understand the point of having this World Cup. I love the World Cup also. I wish they would have changed some stuff about it, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know.
I get it. Again, it's a little off our topic, but the Champions League, with what they're doing, they're adding teams, they're adding games and everything else to an already congested schedule where, the elite.
They're going to have to change the substitution rule.
The elite.
I know it is changing some spots, but they're going to have to change it. You can't just have
The
3
elite
games.
players never get a break. They go, they start their training end of July, beginning of August. They're playing legitimate league games in August, all the way into the later part of May, especially if they're in the Champions League, into the late part of May. And every time they have a break, a week or two, they go right to playing, De Bruyne for Belgium and Mané and Salah to their African countries, and Noir for Germany. There's no real break. They're just going to play for somewhere else. And these games in the fall will be trials, but they're going to want they're legitimate games. They're going to want to start getting ready. I mean, they can't really take them off because they want to get that team prepared, and this is who our starters are, and this is who the subs are, and this is where our subs, and you're getting to the point, when you look at it, when you look at 10 field players in the current substitution rule of 3 subs, that means 7 players are playing the whole game. You're gonna have to go, say, you gotta go to 5, or some sort of additional, because
They're gonna have to add something either in the coming seasons, this year. They're gonna have to add something because the players won't play at some point. I know they're gonna love the game, they want to play, but they're gonna have to understand that they can't do that on a consistent basis forever.
you have your body. I mean, we, as you know, before kind of COVID hit, Noah had something in the summer for like 5 summers in a row. Back in South Carolina, he played with an elite team. Then his teams here in Texas went to nationals. He got set up with one of them because he got hurt. But along that lines, even with that, we always said, okay, you're going to take 2, 3, 4 weeks, some point in July, August, and just say, not do anything. Not that, not that he wasn't doing something, but this is a break from soccer. Your body needs that. Your body needs to heal. Your legs need a break. Your different things with your heart needs a rest from the constant stress of keeping that high level of fitness and everything else. And if you don't give these elite players, at some point they're going to start pushing back. I'm surprised a little bit they haven't, because it's like, De Bruyne was the only one I've seen that actually came out and said, look, this is, I just finished my league season, now I'm going into these Nation Leagues games, which again, I don't think any real fan cares for what the Nations League standings are. England embarrassed themselves by losing all 4 of their games.
Well, England's manager might get.
Or all 3 of their games, sorry.
England's manager is on hot water, but I don't know why he's on hot water. I understand they lost the game, but it's like throwaway games. He's not putting out his starting 11 every single time he's playing them. Harry Maguire's playing.
We're throwing Harry Maguire under the bus, but he's already been thrown under the bus in England, so that's fine. But that's.
I mean, when you assault a garden in Italy at some point, you get sent to prison for a day. That's kind of what you get.
Yeah.
And when you have bad performances like that, and then he also says, why would I play? Because I'm one of the best. If I was taken out if I'm that bad. You were 80 million pounds as a center back. You're going to play.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a great YouTube clip, and we were talking about earlier about De Gea, the goalie for Man U, who's one of Noah's favorites. And he's not known for playing out of the back, but there's a great YouTube clip as Harry Maguire struggled at the end of the season. De Gea had an easy pass to Maguire, or kick it out of bounds, and he actually kicked the ball out of bounds rather than kick it to Maguire, because Maguire was struggling that badly, yet still on the field. But that's where it says the coach